They say time heals all wounds. But why do some of us carry pain for decades, feeling its weight in our thoughts, choices, and relationships long after the moment has passed? Why do certain memories still have the power to freeze us, to ignite sudden fear, anger, or shame, often without warning? It's not weakness, it's not forgetfulness. According to Carl Jung, it's because your past isn't just behind you, it's within you, alive, hidden in the shadows of your unconscious, shaping your present in ways you can't see. What if the root of your anxiety isn't just stress, but a silent complex that formed years ago? What if the reason you can't move forward is that a forgotten version of you is still waiting to be heard? Jung believed that trauma doesn't just wound the heart, it fractures the self. And those broken parts don't vanish. They become your inner passengers, driving your life from the back seat. But there is another way, a path that doesn't deny your pain but honors it, one that leads inward through the dreams you dismiss, the emotions you suppress, the patterns you repeat. Jung's approach doesn't promise quick fixes. It offers something deeper, the chance to become whole. This is the journey of facing your unconscious. This is the moment you stop running from your past and start listening to what it's been trying to teach you all along. What if the pain you've buried long ago is still shaping your life today, without you even realizing it? Carl Jung believed that trauma isn't just something that happens to us, it's something that lives within us. Unlike the surface-level definitions we often hear, Jung described trauma as a psychic wound, a break in the continuity of the psyche. It's not always caused by dramatic or violent events. Sometimes it's created by moments we dismiss as normal, but that deeply disturb the unconscious mind. The loss of a parent's affection, a moment of humiliation in childhood, or a time you were shamed for being yourself. These are the silent earthquakes that split our inner world and form what Jung called complexes. Jung's view of trauma was revolutionary because he saw it as more than just an emotional reaction. He saw it as a kind of fragmentation of the self. When something painful happens and we don't have the capacity to deal with it, especially as children, our psyche protects us by breaking off that part of our experience and burying it deep in the unconscious. But here's the catch. What's buried doesn't disappear. It lingers in the background, silently shaping how we see the world, how we react, how we feel about ourselves, and even how we relate to others. In Jung's view, the trauma doesn't just affect our memory, it affects our identity. Let's say you experienced rejection as a child. You might grow up and consciously forget the event, but a part of you, the part that felt unloved and unworthy, gets frozen in time. That inner part of you doesn't grow with the rest of you. Instead, it waits, stuck, holding all the emotions and beliefs from that moment. This is the foundation of emotional triggers. When something in the present reminds you of the past, it activates that frozen part. Suddenly, you overreact, shut down, or fall into old emotional patterns. Jung would say that it's not the adult reacting, it's the wounded inner child. This is how trauma becomes invisible chains. You may not remember the wound, but it holds you back all the same. Jung compared the unconscious to a dark sea and trauma as the heavy stones resting at the bottom. We don't see them, but they weigh us down. And unless we become conscious of these inner weights, we'll continue to feel anxious, depressed, confused, or directionless without really knowing why. For Jung, the goal of therapy and inner work wasn't to get rid of trauma like an infection. It was to bring it into the light, to integrate it. He didn't believe in fixing people like machines. He believed in healing through awareness. When you acknowledge your wounds, give them a voice, and explore their meaning, they lose their power to control you. They stop pulling the strings from behind the curtain. One of Jung's most powerful insights was that trauma often becomes the very thing that leads us to transformation. It's the pain we try hardest to avoid, that contains the seeds of our greatest growth. He called this the wounded healer archetype, the idea that by confronting our own suffering, we not only heal ourselves, but also become capable of healing others. In this way, the traumatic event is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a deeper journey into wholeness. So why does the past still control the present? Because we haven't truly met it. We haven't entered the dark rooms of our psyche where our wounded selves are still hiding. Jung believed that only by becoming aware of what is unconscious can we become free. That's why dreams, symbols, and emotional triggers are so important. They're clues, messages from the inner world trying to get our attention. It's not easy to face these invisible chains. Jung admitted that confronting one's own unconscious is like descending into the underworld, but he also believed it's the only path to true freedom. Until we make peace with the parts of us shaped by pain, they will continue to influence our relationships, decisions, and even our sense of identity. In the end, Jung's message about trauma is both sobering and hopeful. Yes, the past can hold us captive, but it can also be the doorway to a new self, one that is deeper, wiser, and more whole. The key is not to escape our pain, but to walk into it with courage, compassion, and consciousness. Because once we do, we no longer live from the wound. We live from the wisdom it left behind. Carl Jung believed that much of what shapes our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors lies beneath our conscious awareness. One of his most important ideas was the concept of complexes. These are not just random thoughts or moods. They are powerful emotional patterns created in response to past experiences, especially painful or unresolved ones. They form early in life, often during moments when we felt vulnerable, ashamed, unloved, or overwhelmed. Once created, these complexes don't just sit quietly in the mind. They become autonomous inner forces that live in the unconscious and influence us without our permission. Imagine you're in a situation where someone criticizes you, and suddenly you feel a wave of emotion much stronger than the comment deserves. Maybe you become defensive, anxious, or deeply hurt. That intense reaction likely didn't come from the present moment. It came from a complex. Jung would say that this is not you responding. It's a part of you that was formed long ago, stepping in and taking over. He even described complexes as little personalities, like inner actors who hijack our thoughts and behaviors. These complexes are not just emotional, they're energetic. They attract certain people and situations, often repeating painful patterns in our lives. For example, someone with a rejection complex may unconsciously seek out relationships where they are devalued or abandoned. A person with a failure complex might sabotage their own success because they fear proving they're not good enough. These patterns are rarely conscious. They operate like software running in the background, dictating how we think, feel, and act. Jung didn't think of complexes as bad. He saw them as wounded parts of the self that needed recognition and integration. They form as a way to protect us during moments when we were emotionally overwhelmed. But the problem arises when we never revisit or understand them. Over time, instead of protecting us, they start controlling us. Each complex has a core memory or emotional wound at its center. Around that core, layers of thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors build up. And because the complex is unconscious, we often believe its story without question. If you carry an inferiority complex, for instance, you may go through life believing you're not smart enough, attractive enough, or capable enough, without ever asking where that belief came from or if it's even true. Jung believed that bringing these complexes into consciousness was essential for healing. That's why he often studied dreams, slips of the tongue, emotional triggers, and irrational behaviors. They reveal the presence of a complex. When we react strongly, especially in ways that surprise even ourselves, that's often the signal. A complex has been activated. Here's the hopeful part. Complexes lose their power when we become aware of them. Jung didn't advocate fighting or suppressing them. Instead, he encouraged a relationship with them. By observing, understanding, and engaging with our complexes, we transform them from inner tyrants into sources of insight. In doing so, we reclaim the energy they've been holding hostage. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you always feel nervous speaking up in groups. You freeze, your heart races, and you later criticize yourself for staying silent. On the surface, it seems like just shyness, but beneath that reaction may be a complex formed during a childhood moment. Perhaps you were mocked for saying something wrong in school. That moment, though forgotten consciously, became emotionally charged. Now, whenever a similar situation arises, that old wound is activated. Once you become aware of this pattern and its origin, you can begin to work through the emotion, update the belief, and speak from your present self, not your wounded past. Jung viewed this process as part of the individuation journey, the path to becoming whole. Each complex we uncover and integrate brings us closer to our authentic self. Instead of being trapped in repeating emotional loops, we gain the freedom to choose our responses. Life becomes less reactive and more intentional. It's important to understand that everyone has complexes. They're part of being human. What matters is whether we are conscious of them. Are they running us, or are we in dialogue with them? Are we living from our center or from a wounded place we haven't yet named? Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That is the essence of his work on complexes. These inner traps are not destiny, they're invitations. Invitations to explore our inner world, to listen to the parts of us that have been silent, and to bring light to the places where we've lived in shadow. So the next time you feel an overwhelming emotion, a sudden insecurity, or a puzzling reaction, pause. That moment may be a window into a complex, and by looking through it, you may discover there's a part of you that you don't show to the world, a part you may not even admit to yourself. It holds your anger, envy, guilt, shame, fears, feelings you were told not to feel or express. This part Carl Jung called the shadow. It's not evil, though it can appear dark. It's simply made up of everything about you that was once rejected, denied, or pushed away, usually in childhood. And Jung believed that until we face this shadow, it continues to operate from the background, shaping how we think, act, and feel, especially when we're under pressure. The shadow forms early. As children, we are naturally whole, curious, emotional, expressive, but we quickly learn that not all parts of us are welcome. Maybe we were told, "Don't cry, be a good girl, boys don't get scared," or "You're too much." In that moment, a message is planted. Certain feelings or traits are wrong, so to survive, we bury them. We put on a mask that helps us fit in, the polite one, the strong one, the quiet one. But the parts we hide don't disappear. They become part of the shadow living in the unconscious. Here's where it becomes powerful and dangerous. Jung believed that what we repress doesn't just sit quietly. It builds energy. It becomes emotionally charged. And when triggered, it explodes, often in the form of anger, depression, anxiety, jealousy, or irrational behavior. You might wonder, why did I say that? Or why did I do that again? That's the shadow acting out. It's not trying to hurt you, it's trying to be seen. One of the most common ways the shadow reveals itself is through projection. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When we see traits in others that trigger strong reactions, disgust, admiration, resentment, it's often a sign that part of us is involved. We project onto others what we deny in ourselves. If you've always been told to be humble, you might despise arrogance in others, not because it's bad, but because it represents a part of you that was never allowed to exist. Or if you were taught to be tough, you might mock sensitivity in others because it reflects a vulnerable part you had to hide. The shadow also shows up in the ways we sabotage ourselves. You may want success, but constantly delay taking action. You may want love, but push people away. These inner contradictions come from the unresolved parts of ourselves that don't believe we're worthy, safe, or capable. And the shadow doesn't just affect individuals. It exists in families, communities, even cultures. Racism, sexism, violence, these often stem from collective shadows, where entire groups project what they fear or reject in themselves onto others. But here's the deeper truth Jung wanted us to understand. The shadow isn't just the bad parts of you. It also holds your gold, your hidden potential, power, creativity, and passion. Sometimes we bury parts of ourselves not because they were bad, but because they made others uncomfortable. The loud laugh, the wild imagination, the confidence, all of it might have been too much for someone else. So we learned to shrink. Jung called this the gold in the shadow. It means that reclaiming your wholeness isn't just about healing pain. It's also about recovering the beautiful, bold parts of yourself you left behind. Facing the shadow isn't easy. It requires courage to admit, yes, I feel jealousy, or yes, I have rage. But Jung believed that by confronting our darkness, we become more human, not less. We stop pretending to be perfect and start becoming whole. This is not about indulging negative behavior. It's about taking responsibility for it. When we acknowledge our shadow, we stop being ruled by it. One of Jung's key insights was that the shadow is not a problem to be solved, but a part of the self to be integrated. That means bringing the shadow into consciousness, seeing it, listening to it, working with it. Practices like journaling, dream analysis, inner dialogue, and shadow work can help. It's not about fixing yourself, it's about understanding yourself. And once the shadow is integrated, something incredible happens. We begin to feel less fragmented, less confused. We make decisions from a deeper, wiser place. We stop reacting blindly to triggers. Relationships improve, creativity increases. Life becomes richer, more authentic, because we're no longer just showing the world a mask. We're living from our whole self. So if you feel like parts of your past still haunt you, if you find yourself repeating patterns you don't understand, or if certain emotions scare you, know this: it's your shadow calling. It's not there to destroy you. It's there to free you. Because the past doesn't stay buried. It waits in the shadow, hoping you'll one day turn toward it and say, I see you, I hear you, I'm ready. And in that moment, healing begins. Carl Jung believed that if we truly want to heal from the past and understand ourselves, we have to learn the language of the unconscious, and that language is symbolic. It speaks not in logic or words, but in images, patterns, metaphors, and above all, dreams. Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. He saw them not as meaningless or random mental activity, but as deeply intelligent messages from within, messages that often carry the very answers we've been looking for. According to Jung, the unconscious mind is not just a storehouse of repressed memories and forgotten experiences. It is alive, it is wise, and it is always communicating with us, especially when we sleep. Every night, our unconscious offers us images and stories that try to show us what's going on beneath the surface of our conscious awareness. When we ignore our dreams, we ignore a part of ourselves that is trying to help us heal and grow. Jung saw dreams as compensatory. They often balance what we ignore during the day. If we pretend to be happy all the time, a dream might show us grief or anger we've been avoiding. If we're stuck in fear, a dream might offer a symbol of courage or transformation. The dream doesn't speak in direct advice. It speaks in symbols, and each symbol has a personal and universal meaning. For example, dreaming of a house might represent your inner self. If the house is crumbling or locked, it could suggest parts of your psyche are neglected or inaccessible. A snake might symbolize danger or healing and rebirth, depending on how it appears. Fire might represent destruction or passion and renewal. Jung developed a method called amplification to interpret these symbols. He would ask the dreamer to explore what the symbol meant to them personally, while also connecting it to archetypes, universal patterns that exist in the collective unconscious. Archetypes are characters or themes we all instinctively recognize: the hero, the mother, the shadow, the trickster. When an archetype shows up in your dream, it's a sign that something deeper is at work. Your psyche is calling you to transformation. Let's say you dream of being chased by a dark figure. Many people have had some version of this dream. It's terrifying, but Jung would say the dark figure represents your shadow, the part of you you've disowned. The fact that it's chasing you means your unconscious wants you to stop running and finally face it. The dream isn't trying to scare you, it's trying to wake you up. And once you turn and confront the figure, even in a dream, powerful shifts can happen in your waking life. Jung also used a practice called active imagination, a way to engage with symbols from dreams in waking life. If you had a dream of a wounded child or a mysterious animal, you could visualize it, write a dialogue with it, even draw or paint it. This isn't about fantasy, it's about communication. By engaging with the symbol, you give it space to express itself, and in return, you begin to understand what it's trying to teach you. Over time, this leads to emotional release, clarity, and healing. Trauma often shows up in dreams in strange forms, like being lost, trapped, or falling. These are not just meaningless images. They represent emotional truths. Being lost might reflect a time in your past where you felt abandoned or confused. Falling might relate to a loss of control or security. The dream offers the image your conscious mind may not be ready to put into words, but the image still carries the truth. Jung believed that the dream world holds the keys to freedom, because in dreams our inner world becomes visible. We see what we normally hide, and we discover what we didn't know we were missing. For those dealing with trauma, depression, or deep inner conflict, working with dreams can be life-changing. You begin to understand why you feel what you feel, not from outside advice, but from your own inner guidance. Importantly, Jung warned against trying to force meanings onto dreams. He believed in respecting the dream as a living message, not a puzzle to be solved. Interpretation should be gentle, open, and curious, not judgmental or overly analytical. He encouraged people to listen to their dreams over time, because meaning often unfolds gradually. The more you pay attention to your dreams, the more they begin to speak clearly. In our fast-paced world, we often ignore this inner language, but Jung believed that reconnecting with it is essential, not just for mental health, but for spiritual growth. Because healing doesn't always come from logic, it comes from insight, from connection, from being willing to sit with a strange dream image and ask, "What are you trying to show me?" So if your past still controls your present, your unconscious already knows why, and it's been telling you night after night. The question is, are you listening? Because within your dreams lies the wisdom of your healing, the courage of your transformation. Carl Jung believed that the deepest goal of human life is not perfection, but wholeness. This journey toward wholeness is what he called individuation, a lifelong process of becoming the person you truly are by integrating all the parts of yourself, including those shaped by trauma. While many people spend their lives avoiding the pain of the past, Jung argued that true healing only comes when we turn inward and face it. It is through this courageous process that we stop being victims of our past and start living from a place of inner freedom. Individuation is not self-improvement in the modern sense. It's not about becoming better, smarter, or more successful. It's about becoming whole, bringing together the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche, the light and the dark, the known and the hidden. Jung saw this as a sacred and deeply personal journey. Each person's path is unique, but the pattern is universal. We must descend into the depths of ourselves, confront what we have rejected or forgotten, and bring it into the light of consciousness. Why is this so important for healing trauma? Because trauma splits the self. It creates gaps in our identity. It pushes parts of us into the unconscious, the parts that felt scared, ashamed, or powerless. These parts don't simply disappear, they wait. And unless we consciously return to them, they continue to affect us through triggers, emotional reactivity, and repeating patterns. Jung taught that to heal, we must reclaim these lost fragments. This is not easy, but it is essential. Think of your psyche like a broken mirror. Each fragment reflects a part of you. Some you love, some you fear. Individuation is the process of gathering those fragments and putting them back together, not to restore the old image, but to create a deeper, more honest version of yourself. The process doesn't erase your wounds, it transforms them. Jung often said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you. Your trauma becomes the doorway through which you meet your true self." As we move through individuation, we begin to see the patterns of our life more clearly. Why we attract certain relationships, why we avoid certain risks, why the same emotions keep returning. When we were unconscious, these patterns seemed like fate. But through individuation, we realize they are messages. They are reflections of the parts of ourselves that we haven't yet embraced. Facing the past is not about reliving it endlessly. Jung was not interested in simply repeating trauma stories. Instead, he believed in meaning-making. What does this pain say about you? What does it want to teach you? What part of you needs to be acknowledged, nurtured, or set free? These questions turn suffering into insight. They help us stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from a deeper, wiser self. One of the keys to individuation is the integration of the shadow, the rejected and hidden parts of ourselves. As we saw earlier, the shadow holds both pain and potential. When we deny it, we remain stuck in fear and projection. But when we turn toward it, we begin to unlock new dimensions of our personality. The energy that was used to repress can now be used to create, to connect, and to grow. Another important part of individuation is developing a relationship with what Jung called the self, the inner center of the psyche that holds our full potential. The self is not the ego. It's deeper than that. It's the whole of who you are, including your contradictions, your wounds, your dreams, and your deeper wisdom. Jung saw the self as both a psychological and spiritual reality. To connect with it is to feel a sense of purpose, direction, and inner peace, even in the midst of pain. How do we begin this process? Not by rushing or forcing. Individuation is a slow, unfolding journey. It begins with self-awareness, noticing your emotions, reactions, dreams, and patterns. It continues with self-honesty, being willing to face your fears and admit your wounds. And it deepens with self-acceptance, learning to love not just your strengths, but your flaws, mistakes, and vulnerabilities. Practices like dream work, journaling, therapy, active imagination, and creative expression can support individuation. But the most important ingredient is courage. The courage to face what hurts, to question what's familiar, and to let go of who you think you should be in order to become who you truly are. Jung often said that individuation is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. And when we face the past, not to erase it, but to understand it, we begin to reclaim our power. We no longer live from old wounds. We live from a new center, one that is rooted in wholeness. So if your past feels heavy, if you've been haunted by what you couldn't face, know that this journey is not about going backward. It's about moving forward with all of yourself. The pain you carry is not a weakness. It's an invitation to heal. Romantic love often begins with the belief that someone else will complete us. It's a longing deeply rooted in the human psyche, and Carl Jung understood this as more than just emotional desire. It's a reflection of our inner quest for wholeness. Jung didn't believe we were meant to find completion through another person, but rather that love mirrors our inner need to unite all the lost, fragmented parts of ourselves. This longing starts early in life. From childhood, we're taught to be a certain way: polite, strong, smart, quiet, responsible. But in becoming who we are supposed to be, we often cut off other parts of ourselves. Maybe we stop expressing anger because it was punished. Maybe we hide our sensitivity because it was mocked. Over time, we grow into adults who feel like something is missing, but we don't know what. Then we fall in love, and suddenly, that missing piece seems to appear in someone else. This, Jung said, is no coincidence. Romantic love stirs the unconscious. It draws us toward the qualities we've exiled from ourselves. If we're overly rational, we might fall in love with someone deeply emotional. If we're quiet and reserved, we may be captivated by someone loud and confident. This isn't just preference. It's symbolic. It's our psyche trying to recover what we lost in becoming the person we are today. But here's the challenge. We often confuse this process with completion through another person. We think they are what we were missing, when in fact, they're showing us what we need to reclaim inside ourselves. Let's take an example. A man who always plays the role of the caretaker, strong, protective, composed, might fall deeply in love with someone free-spirited and emotionally expressive. In the beginning, her spontaneity and depth may feel like magic, but over time, it may begin to overwhelm or frustrate him. The qualities he was once drawn to now make him uncomfortable. Why? Because he hasn't yet integrated those same qualities in himself. Jung would say this conflict isn't a sign that the love is wrong, but that it's doing its true work, pulling him toward his own wholeness. The woman isn't there to balance him out. She's a mirror of the balance he needs to find within. The same applies to her. She may admire his calmness and strength because she's disconnected from her own stability, but unless she works to develop that side of herself, she'll depend on him to carry it. That imbalance creates tension. One partner becomes the anchor, the other the wave. But the real task is for each person to become both wave and anchor within themselves. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of the inner marriage, the symbolic union of opposites within. Love invites us to this inner work. It asks us not just to admire the other person, but to learn from them, not to rely on them for what we lack, but to use their reflection to grow more whole ourselves. This doesn't mean love becomes selfish or solitary. Quite the opposite. Two people who are working toward wholeness within become better partners to each other. They don't need to control or fix each other. They no longer love from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance. They don't say, "I need you to complete me." They say, "I am becoming whole and I choose to walk with you." Of course, this journey isn't always smooth. Relationships will still stir up insecurity, jealousy, fear, and old wounds. But instead of seeing these as failures, Jung invites us to see them as signs. Here is where you are still growing. Here is what still needs your attention. Love becomes a mirror for your inner life, not just your joy, but your unfinished stories. Jung believed that our ultimate task is to become whole, not perfect, but whole. That means honoring every part of ourselves, the strong and the soft, the logical and the emotional, the bold and the fearful. Romantic love is a powerful stage where this wholeness can begin to take shape because it forces us to confront parts of ourselves we can't see on our own. So the next time you feel drawn to someone, ask, what is it in them that feels familiar, exciting, or even uncomfortable? What they awaken in you is a clue, not just about them, but about you. And through that clue, you can begin the sacred work of becoming the person you were always meant to be. In this way, love is not a distraction from the self. It is a deep return to the self, a reminder that wholeness is not something we find in another person. It's something we uncover through the experience of loving and being loved.